Okay. So obviously I've spent a significant amount of time over the last week and a half listening to everybody's calls, not just the people that are on this training, but for the whole team. And what I ultimately found is there are really like two buckets that I would place the salespeople in. One bucket would be the group that is taking shortcuts and selling on price, and kind of not following that path or going away from what worked in the first place for them. And then there's another group that is very sort of handcuffed to only following the script and not knowing or feeling comfortable from necessarily navigating away from it in order to have a real conversation with the prospect. Now, what do you guys think I mean by having a real conversation? And everybody that's on here, I expect to participate.
Hi, Dana. It's Barbara.
Listening.
Oops.
Sorry, Barbara.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, I think that, having a real conversation for me anyway, is just like, I find something that I can relate to them about, something that we have in common. And so that seems to help my conversations become a little bit more, I don't want to say intimate, that's not the right word, but more,
but I like where your head's at.
I'm not really
So
sure.
you want to be relatable and try to create some sort of common ground.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
And Jesse, what were you going to say?
Sort of what I mean, just putting what she said in a really compact nutshell. Active listening, just kind of trying to listen more and improve what they're actually trying to say.
Barbara,
which leads to that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, Barbara, you brought up something a little bit earlier than what I was ready to address it. But since you brought it up, I think this is a good opportunity. I think that in sometimes finding common ground, you go, not you particular, the people that are attempting to do what you're doing, kind of go too far into left field or right field with whatever that common ground is, and you lose sight of why you're on the phone in the first place. So you could be talking about dogs or health or the beach or grandkids, whatever the case may be, for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you think you have this great rapport and friendship, but then they still, want to think about it at the end of the conversation because the conversation was not primarily focused about uncovering why you're on the phone in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yes, fair enough. Yep.
So I'm going to just go through this list of notes that I have. And if anything comes up that has like an aha moment for any of you while I'm going through and asking questions, then definitely feel free to unmute and talk. If you feel like you have something you want to say, but I'm in the middle of a sentence, you can use that hand button and I'll see that right away and be able to just have you ask your question. I've always said from day one that people are only going to buy from people that they like, that they trust, and that they deem as the expert in their industry. So in being the expert in the industry, how many people on this call have actually taken any time to research our competition and really know what's out there so you can speak from a level of authority? Has anybody ever done that?
I've attempted to a little bit, and I'm sorry, I can't find the hand raising thing.
That's okay.
Okay. But it's almost kind of hard to find our competition in a way. Like I just kind of did some research on LinkedIn, but I didn't seem to get very far. And I also, to be honest with you, Dana, I didn't want to appear that I was looking to be hired by, or, be go into with another team as well. So I kind of feel really careful about asking questions because I want someone to go, well, come into our training and now you can, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to accomplish success here with you guys.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that up, but I'm actually more talking about the buyer experience. So really kind of researching it from a buyer's perspective, not from an agent perspective. So being familiar with your competition on what your customers are seeing is actually really important, and it will allow you to have a lot more ammunition to use when it's appropriate to use it. So for example, I have 4 other companies that we're going to just quickly talk about. And writing this down would be important because any information that you can have that will make you stronger is obviously valuable. So I calculated a couple of days ago how much it would cost for a Lincoln Heritage final expense policy for a 71-year-old female in California for $25,000. And it came out to $242 a month. And of course, that would be, no waiting period, so immediate coverage. That point right there is one of the reasons that makes our insurance more expensive. So let's talk about Mutual of Omaha. So Mutual of Omaha is a company that comes up often, and it can be sold 2 ways. Mutual of Omaha can be sold through a broker, and it can be sold directly through the Mutual of Omaha directly. And I'm just going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. And this is what I'm talking about researching competition, not necessarily doing it on recruiting websites or, getting like a deep dive into it about being an agent. It's about, what does the customer see? What are your clients seeing out there? You should be familiar with that. So you can speak to it. So what you need to keep an eye out for is something called guaranteed whole life insurance. And that would be the equivalent sort of our final expense that people are buying. You'll see here that Mutual of Omaha is available till 85. They have no medical or health questions. You can do it all online. Their maximum they'll do is 25,000, and the majority of claims are paid within 24 hours after they get the death certificate and they start that process. But right here on the website, a whole life guaranteed policy also includes a graded death benefit. If death occurs from natural causes during the policy's first 2 years, the beneficiary will receive all premiums you paid plus 10%. Once the 2-year period ends, the beneficiary will receive the policy's full benefit. So it's one thing to be able to say, because I told you that Mutual of Omaha has a 2-year waiting period, but it's another thing to be able to say, you know what, I actually saw on their website that their guaranteed whole life insurance comes with a 2-year waiting period. How much do you guys think it costs for $25,000 for a 71-year-old female in California?
With them?
With them.
Waiting period?
Now, how much do you think the monthly premium would be?
About 195.
Asal actually got it pretty close. She said 170. It's actually 167 with no riders. So you really have to understand the pricing and what you're up against, because if Mutual of Omaha is $167 a month for the equivalent of a final expense policy with a 2-year waiting period, and Lincoln Heritage is what did I say? Hold on. Where did I put it? I think I might have given you the wrong quote for us. Oh, here we are. We're $200.75. Okay, so we're about a $30 a month difference, which is pretty true across the board. So that 2-year waiting period is going to be really important to uncover if it is important to the customer, right? So we'll talk about that in a second, but just because we think it's important doesn't necessarily mean the customer thinks it's important. And to identify that, you have to do it in the form of asking questions, not just, well, Mutual of Omaha has a 2-year waiting period. That feels very confrontational. And if you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, I'm always putting myself in the buyer's shoes. When you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, you have to think, how would I respond if someone said that to me? It is always best to approach things in forms of questions. So, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I could definitely understand why that pricing would look attractive to you. Let me ask you a question. Is it important to you to have coverage that starts immediately? Or just in stopping there, is it important to you to have coverage that starts immediately? Okay, and let them answer. And most of the time they'll say yes. If I told you that Mutual of Omaha has a 2-year waiting period before your coverage begins, would that change things for you? So you see how I'm not like just dumping information on them, assuming that because it's true and because I think it's important, that they're going to automatically agree with me. Does that make sense, you guys? You have to ask by uncovering with questions.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
good. Now, if somebody applies with an agent, which is a broker, they get a little bit more options. They will get like an accelerated death benefit and terminal illness benefit, things that we provide. And it's still a 2-year waiting period. So there's no difference. Someone tells you that there is no 2-year waiting period, I don't want you to be argumentative about it. I just want you to know that it's right here on the website for you to be able to refer to. Okay, so that is, that's Mutual of Omaha. What about Colonial Penn? Is anybody familiar with what Colonial Penn offers? They have 2 types of whole life programs. It would be important for you to know what those are. Does anybody know?
Do not.
No.
No. Okay. So Colonial Penn they have permanent whole life insurance and they have guaranteed issue life insurance. Does anybody know the difference between the 2?
No.
Guaranteed issue usually is just a higher risk, but higher premium.
It's usually higher premium. Guaranteed issue essentially means that there's no health questions. Sorry, let me let someone in. There's typically means that there's no health questions, like it's a guaranteed issue. The reason they can do that is because they have that 2-year waiting period. But the guaranteed issue program that Colonial Penn offers is the program they advertise to seniors. Does anybody know the program they advertise to seniors?
No.
Okay. The program that Colonial Penn advertises to seniors is $9.95 a month. That's the one that's advertised in their brochures, on their commercials, and it's $9.95 per unit. So Colonial Penn sells in units of 1,000. That's their guaranteed issue program that they push to seniors that we are most coming up against. And this one's pretty easy because we typically are less expensive than Colonial Penn in those cases. So if you were to take $9.95 times 25, how much is Colonial Penn's $25,000 final expense plan?
Well, it's 10 times. Yeah, it's times 1,000.
No, it's $9.95 times 25 is what?
Oh yeah, it's basically $250 roughly.
$250 versus our $200 a month. So now we're less expensive and we have so many other benefits. They also have a permanent whole life policy, which is similar to our final expense. And the pricing is a little bit closer, but there's nothing about it that's better than Lincoln. So Colonial Penn, I can usually beat every time. I specifically looked up AIG, Barbara, because of who you were talking with yesterday for you. After you were, was that you, Barbara? I'm sorry. I might have
AIG,
even
you
been
know what?
confusing them.
I'm not really sure. AIG.
That might have not even
Sorry,
been
I'm
you.
not sure.
That's okay. So AIG is another life insurance company that offers guaranteed issue. And anytime now, a guaranteed issue life insurance always comes with what? Regardless of the policy, what will it always come with?
2-year
The
waiting
waiting
period.
period.
Waiting period.
A 2-year waiting period every time, regardless of health. And a lot of these guaranteed issue companies, you guys, they have an online calculator, and you could simply just go to the website as a consumer, type in the state, the age, and the gender, and it will pop out a quote. So AIG for $25,000 for a 71-year-old female in California is $242 a month. We're still less expensive than them. And then lastly, oh, maybe it was AAA. Was it AAA, Barbara? Was that you? Or is that somebody else? Why do I keep thinking it's you? I don't know.
You know what? AAA sounds familiar. I mean, I
thought one
try
of
to.
them were you.
It's definitely possible. I can't remember every detail of every call I have. Sometimes I just go off and I'm thinking, wow, I just need to keep moving on. So
That's fine. Okay, so AAA is another one that I pulled because I've come across them several times. People who are AAA members, believe that they can get discounts for their insurance, which isn't the case. They just usually get other roadside assistance benefits that come with their policy. AAA also has a 2-year waiting period for all their policies, and it's a 30% graded payback, which means in the first 2 years, then their families will receive a 30% payback. Their policy is $175 a month for $25,000. So, and we were 200. So in all of these examples, the point is you need to know what's out there, right? You need to know what you're up against. You need to know what your clients are seeing so you can attack it head on. And this is why it's so important to not sell on price, and why we have to educate people on what's out there without giving them information overload, and finding out and uncovering what's important to them by asking questions, not by pitching. So does anybody have any questions on like competition, and kind of stuff like this that I've just been recently talking about before we move on? John?
Yeah, none of those companies have anything like the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society either, do they?
No.
Okay.
No, we'll talk about that too in a little bit. Right now, I'm only kind of looking at it from a high level point of view when consumers are price shopping. I personally believe, I've always felt this way, that you need to know your competition, right? You need to know what's out there. You need to know what you're selling against. And this is why it's so important that we take the journey with every single person that we're talking to. And sometimes people tend to sort of paraphrase the benefits. And when I say paraphrase, I mean it is like you're like 2-3 sentences on term versus whole life. You're talking about immediate payout in like 1 or 2 sentences, and then you're immediately going to the Guardian Society. It's like 2 or 3 sentences, and in 5 minutes you're already on to health questions. And this happens every single day. You will not sell anybody by paraphrasing, not pausing, and not asking questions.
Guilty.
Yeah, me too, for sure. And yes, Dana, it was me. AAA. Now I do remember that was me, for real, for sure.
You have to remember that the people that you're talking with are hearing this information for the first time. And I want you to kind of take a step back from yourself and remember what it felt like for you when you heard this information for the first time. and how great you thought it was and why you made the decision to represent Lincoln Heritage. Forget about, the commission, forget about the free leads, forget about the bonus program. Why did you choose Lincoln Heritage to represent? How is it possible that you're making the decision to paraphrase all of the information that we teach you and provide you in 5 minutes? It's not going to work. It will never work. So I have about 7, 8 bullet points I want to cover, and then another page. My goal is to try to get you out of here by 9. I could literally go on for probably longer than that. There's just so much that I've heard and so much information I want to share, but I've tried to paraphrase it the best that I can. So here are some things that I'm going to be recommending based upon what I've heard in conversations. Number 1 is enthusiasm. I'm hearing either too much enthusiasm or too little. And what I mean by that is you could have too much enthusiasm to the point where it sounds not genuine anymore. And so if you picture yourself at, I don't know, a cocktail party or an event or a birthday party, and you're sitting there chatting with your friends, and somebody walks up and, it's a mutual friend, and they introduce themselves to you and they're like, "Hey, my name is Dana. Nice to meet you." Would you not go, "Whoa, this person is a little bit out there"? I mean, or is that normal to you? I don't know. But if someone kind of, came to me with that sort of enthusiasm and approach, I would back up. It doesn't sound genuine to me. And believe it or not, I do sometimes hear that over enthusiasm on the phone. And the person you're talking to is the exact opposite. You have to know who you're talking to and sort of kind of match their energy level so they feel comfortable talking to you. You don't want to dominate it so much. Even if that is your natural personality, you have to sort of take a little bit of a softer approach in that case and gauge the person that you're speaking with before you're just out of the gates sounding like you're too strong. On the flip side, and I think this one is more common, there's not enough enthusiasm. And I would say that's probably 80% of the calls, where it's very just kind of humdrum and you're just another person that's not going to buy from me attitude. And, we're already mentally in the place where you're not going to put in that time and that effort and that energy level that you need to take that immediate control in the beginning and get these people to a point where they actually want to engage and talk to you. So you just need to kind of self-identify where you think you are, and you either need to take it down a little bit or you need to take it up a little bit. There's very few people that I feel are so consistent and have the very same energy level on every single call. And so that's something that I would focus on. Does anyone have any questions on the energy or enthusiasm?
No.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, my camera. Sorry.
it's okay.
1
You don't have to
second.
have it on.
All right.
Whatever you want.
So I feel like I have I don't know if it would be it's not necessarily enthusiasm or lack of enthusiasm, but I end up in situations where our conversations with customers, or my conversations with customers, sometimes get a little too almost what would it be?
I think you joined in late, Dustin, when I was talking to the group about where you're finding common ground and you kind of go off in left or right field for too long, and you're
Yeah.
losing sight of the actual point of why you're on the phone in the first place, and you lose some of that control. Is that kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, a little bit. But it's also like I've had some of them almost try to buddy up to me
Mm-hmm.
too much. And then, like, for example, one of the couple of them have like tried to Facebook friend, like looked me up on Facebook and were like trying to Facebook friend me and stuff like that. So, which is in terms of like rapport and all of that, that's great. But I'm just trying to find that right balance where I'm still connecting with them, which doesn't seem to be an issue most of the time, but it almost kind of goes too much where they're, you know,
And
trying to,
so that's going to
yeah.
be, that's going to be something that you need to focus on and recognize that maybe when you're trying to develop that rapport, you're allowing it to veer off too far. And sometimes you'll sell those people, but it really has to be focused around, everything that we're talking about while interweaving rapport at the same time. And that's just going to come with confidence, I think,
Yeah.
in what you're doing. And every day you're personally just getting stronger as you have more conversations and we continue to talk and, coach about this kind of stuff. Which brings me to, my next point, which I think the majority of people on this team need to be very, very conscious about. You cannot pitch until you really understand their needs and concerns. You cannot start pitching until you really understand their needs and concerns. So there's a ton of you, and I say not you, the people in this group, you meaning the team as a whole, that are skipping a lot of the initial questions, or you're asking the initial questions and then just taking the answer at face value and moving on to the next, which is really, really common. There is only so much that I can script for you, right? And then it has to be on you to recognize that you have to keep peeling that onion back. You have to keep digging deeper to find out what their true needs or concerns are. So just because they say, what expenses are you looking to cover in the event you pass away? I'm looking to cover my funeral. Okay, great. Have you decided between a cremation and a burial? Cremation. Okay, and who's going to be in charge of your final arrangements? Every single one of these questions, you can do so much more uncovering and digging with instead of just moving on to the next one. So what else can you ask if somebody says, I'm looking to cover my funeral costs? What else can you ask? Besides, have you decided between a cremation and a burial? Something that's not written on the script. What else could you ask?
What kind of expenses are you looking to cover?
Well, they just answered that question with funeral costs. So what else can you ask?
Okay.
So we know that they're here to, pay for funeral costs.
You can ask if there's any debt that they need to cover.
Do you want to leave anything extra for somebody?
Have you picked a funeral home?
What if they want cremation? You wouldn't want to ask that question, right? It's not really relevant. What else? How about, why is it important to you to have your funeral costs taken care of? Guys, I'm not asking yes or no questions. So the questions that you've all asked are yes or no questions. Do you have any debt you need to cover? Are you wanting to leave anything extra? Have you picked a funeral home? Those are all questions that are not going to really serve you or provide you with any additional information besides a yes or a no. You see that? So why is having your funeral costs important? Or if they say, even if they say, what expenses are you looking to cover when you pass away? Well, I'm looking to, leave some money for my spouse. Okay, why is it important for you to leave money for your spouse? It may seem like a silly question, but it's not. Who else if you guys aren't taking the time to ask those questions, do you think other people are too? No. So people are only going to buy from people who take an interest in them and feel like you are here for them. It is about them, not about you. In the same
Could you-
respect, yeah.
Sorry, could you say, does it necessarily have to be about the funeral or the cremation? Could you say something like, you know, if they say, oh yeah, I want to leave something behind for my son or my kids or whatever, could you say like, oh, tell me a little bit about them? You know, does it have to be directly about, or can you get rapport just talking to them about their family?
Yeah, but you want to, yes, but you want to steer it upon how they answer the question. So yeah, in that example, it's because they said, I want to pay for my funeral costs. So there's so many questions you can ask there. Why is it important to you to cover your funeral costs? That allows them to tell you that they are trying to protect someone, right? So without saying, who are you trying to protect?
Right.
You know, it allows them to come up with that answer on their own, because it could be something you wouldn't have even known to ask. Okay, so then once you get that answer, so let's pretend, I guess somebody answer the question for me. Why is it important to have your funeral costs paid for?
So that my kids don't have a burden and they have to pay for it out of pocket.
Okay, that makes complete sense. A lot of the clients that I work with feel the same way as you. And then at that point, you can say, you can try to make a connection. For me, because I do have kids, I would say I have 2 kids as well. And I would definitely want to make sure that I have something in place to make sure that they're protected. Have they ever had to, you know, plan or experience what it's like to pay for a funeral before? And the reason I'm asking those questions is because I'm trying to see if there's any existing pain, right? I'm trying, the questions that I ask are not just about developing rapport, you guys. It's not surface. Most of my questions are not surface level. Most of my questions are trying to figure out what the pain is. Because without them opening up to me and telling me what their pain is, what their fears are, what they're afraid of, I am staying up here. And you can't stay up here. When people start conversations with you, you're a stranger, you're over the phone, you could be a scam artist. It's going to take a lot of tone and the right questions for them to be able to open up to you, right? Because a lot of times people are like, look, I just want your price, right? I just want your price. Perfect. You know, I completely agree with you. We are definitely here to talk about price. But I'm trying to figure out the best type of life insurance program for you so that we can actually make sure that your kids are guaranteed to get that money when you pass away. You know, there's a lot of life insurance programs that will only last you for a certain amount of time. And so, you know, and then trying to give them like a little bit of information and then going back to asking questions again. So uncovering, not continuing with the pitch until you really make it a point to understand their needs, their concerns, and their pain, if you can. I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm very successful at being able to do that. And that by itself creates rapport. Asking the right questions and uncovering their pain by itself will create rapport because nobody else is doing that. One of the big mistakes I've been hearing on the phone is hearing I have a problem and then saying, well, I have the solution. So for example, I'm hearing a lot of, I really need something to cover my funeral costs. And we are automatically going into, I'm so happy we're talking today because Lincoln Heritage has been the leader in final expense insurance for almost 58 years, and that is all we do. And I can't wait to tell you about how great our program is. That is a huge mistake because you're making it about you before you've made it about them. And it may sound good, you know, it may sound great, like you're the hero to come right out of the gate and say, I have the best solution for you. You're going to love it. But it's not, because you're making it about you and you're not making it about them first. So before you go into the pitch, you have to ask more questions, and you have to peel that onion back, and you have to write everything down so that you can refer back to it and use it as you're going through your presentation. And putting yourself in their shoes. So you're not just putting yourself in their shoes from a buyer's perspective as far as price shopping and being familiar with your competition, but you also want to put yourself in their shoes and think about, what's the buying experience like for them when they're talking to me? What could they be thinking and going through when they're on the phone with me? What do I expect as a buyer when I'm talking to someone about a product? What type of experience do I want to have? And if you really take a step back and think about that, it may change a little bit for you. And the best example that I can give, because I'm not a big consumer in general, I don't like to be sold things. So, but I like to be educated and I like to be informed. And that in and of itself will create a buying decision. So that's why I am a huge proponent of asking questions to dig deep to find out, well, what is it that's important to them? So that way I can tailor these products and services towards their needs. Because if we just stay on script the whole time, we could be talking about things that are really not that important to them, right? And I know that most of you guys on this call have had calls where people already have their funeral paid for, or they already have 2 policies and they're maybe looking for a little bit extra, or they're 50, 45, totally healthy, and they don't care about a waiting period. You have to identify the things that are important to them, not just product pitch them, because you don't know without asking questions if those are in fact important to them. Yes.
I have something I wanted to add. With the let's say if they already have a policy and they're just looking to add extra, I've noticed something that has actually helped me is, and this wouldn't be at the very beginning of the call, but as we move on, sort of switching the usefulness of the old policy or the current policy that they already have, and what it is that we would be giving to them. So basically saying that the Lincoln Heritage policy can then be utilized as the baseline to ensure that those funeral expenses are taken care of, and that we can save them money with that, and then they can use their current policy for the something extra, because it's probably going to take a while for it to get to them in the first place, and there's nobody there to help get those expenses down and all of that kind of stuff.
All great benefits of what we provide. I would still make sure that you are saying that stuff in the form of questions. And I think this is the biggest mistake that everybody on this team is making, is we're not asking enough questions. And so if someone tells me they already have a policy, my first question that immediately comes to my mind, tell me what you like about that policy.
Ooh,
and a lot of times people don't even know. They don't even know what they have. And I'll say, oh, okay, did you purchase that online, or did you actually talk to somebody? But did somebody come to your home and talk to you about it? Like, what is important to you as you're searching and looking for additional coverage? What are things that are important to you? So I'm still trying to dig deeper and figure out their pain, their need, what's important to them before I even start, and once we start talking about the benefits, I would ask questions. Do you like the idea that, that you would be able to use our policy to provide immediate payout and pay for funeral costs while having your other one stay with your family. Is that something that you like? Right? As opposed to saying you can do this while this one does that. You see how there's a difference? How you get them to engage with you as opposed to just telling them why they should like it?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, and also it eliminates the chance of them zoning out. And
Always, you always have to, the old school term is trial close. You always have to trial close throughout your entire presentation to make sure that they're checked in and engaged.
I've also heard that the more people say yes during like a sales pitch, it gets them in the habit of like yes, yes, yes.
It
And so-
depends. It depends
yeah.
because yes can just be something they're saying to move the conversation along
Oh, yeah.
so that you get to
yeah,
the point and you get to your price.
Yeah.
So I intertwine open-ended questions with close-ended questions, yes or no. But if they're not talking to me and they're not asking me questions or engaged with what I'm saying, it's going down a path to thank you for the information. Have a nice day. And so the whole goal is to make sure that for the first however long we're talking, that they think that I'm the expert, that I'm providing them with information and value that they didn't even know existed, that I am taking the time to ask them questions and figure out why this is important to them and get them to tell me, because that is actually going to make them feel that I care. And then now we're actually getting into the presentation part. And here's the mistakes people are making in the presentation. I've already mentioned one of them. Paraphrasing is a huge problem right now. And then doing it like in your own way to the point where I don't even understand what you're talking about when I'm listening to the calls. And again, when I say you guys, I'm not saying you in particular, I'm saying you as a group. I just want to make sure I clarify that every time so nobody feels like I'm pointing them out. So you cannot paraphrase. Paraphrase is like shooting yourself in the foot and throwing money in the trash can on leads. So the best way that I mentally picture it is taking the journey. You have to take the journey with every single client. And before you move on from one section to the next, you have to check in. I can't tell you how often I jump in calls and you're talking about term versus whole life. And when you're done with that, you're immediately, and now the other thing that we can provide to you is immediate payout without any pause between one section to the next, without any checking in to, do you really understand now that, the difference between term and whole life? I would even go as far as inserting examples of other companies that you know of. Now, I know we didn't talk about term today, companies that offer term, but because I wanted you to kind of compare pricing with other whole life companies, but that could be something that you could research on your own as a consumer, as who's offering term and how much does it cost, and do some calculator options yourself so that you can be more self-educated on what you're saying. So for example, I'll say, just to give you an example, do you ever see advertisements out there that say get 20,000 of coverage for $9.99 a month or 50,000 of coverage for $29 a month? Tell me if you've ever seen anything like that. And I'll ask them that. Yes, all the time. Perfect. I'm so glad we're talking about this because those are perfect examples of companies that are advertising and marketing their term insurance. Why do they do that? Why do you think they do that? And I'll ask them. And I'm asking them so I can get them to talk to me and engage in the conversation, because when they talk about it, they're going to believe it. And I'm not lying about it. I need them to really believe what we're talking about, not just listening to me pitch it. So I'll ask them, why do you think that they do that? And they'll a lot of times that if they're engaged with me, they'll say to get you to call, or because it's really cheap. And I'll say, absolutely, you are absolutely right. The reason they advertise that is because they know that you are looking for the most amount of coverage for the smallest amount of money. So if you didn't have a really great understanding between term insurance and whole life insurance, and you were just online and you saw a $20,000 quote for $9.99 a month, and then you saw a $20,000 quote for $79 a month, which one are you going to buy? And they'll tell me the $9.99 one. Exactly. And you're going to buy the $9.99 one because you don't understand the difference between term and whole life. And at the end of the day, that policy is going to cancel. And you're going to be 10 years older now, and you're going to have to start all over. And all that money you've put into that for 10 years is gone. You will not get any of it back. And this is how I talk to them when I'm explaining it to them. And God forbid, if something were to have changed with your health during that 10 years, you might not even be able to get another insurance policy. Is everything I'm saying making sense to you? Like, do you really understand why it's important to have a whole life policy? And at this point, they're with me, right? They know that I took the time to take a deep dive and explain to them the difference, give them examples, paint a picture of what's going to happen if they sign up for a term policy. And then I'll even say, now, the good news is now that you know you're only looking for whole life insurance, all companies that offer whole life insurance are all about the same price. And so what am I doing there?
Planting a seed.
Planting a seed for what?
Well, and there's value.
What am I
You're
doing
planting
specifically?
you're planting a seed for the end, for the close, for the.
What am I doing specifically by saying the good news about you wanting a whole life policy is that we're all about the same price? What am I doing there?
You're
you're
eliminating
price shopping.
yeah.
Exactly. We are all about the same price, maybe $5 or $10 difference per month. They don't need to know that there's, specific companies with specific rates. You need to know that for yourself and your information. But I've already spent probably a good 5 to 10 minutes just on that paragraph. And you guys, when people are asking health questions at the 5-minute mark, I cringe because you're done. You're not going to sell them. So deep dive into that. Checking in, asking questions. Perfect. I'm so glad we've uncovered that. Makes me feel good to know that we're on the same page. All right. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about are things that people don't think about when buying life insurance. So we know the most important thing is price shopping. You need to get the best price because guess what? You're still with us. You're still alive. I totally understand that we need to find something that's affordable and sustainable for it to last the rest of your life, right? Are we on the same page with that? And yes, so I'm always, typically 99% of the time, ending my sentence with a question. I'm always typically ending my sentences with a question. So I'll say, perfect. The next part that I'm going to talk to you about is the things that people don't think about. What's actually going to happen to this policy and what's going to happen to my family when I pass away? And one thing that Lincoln Heritage can provide your family is immediate payout. Have you ever had to plan or pay for a funeral before? That's typically when I'll ask that question. And why am I asking that question there?
You're framing the benefit.
You're getting into the emotion of what they've experienced so far and their pain, and you're uncovering the onion.
Exactly. And continuing to do that throughout the process. And if they've planned or paid for a funeral before, then everything that's going to follow is going to make a lot more sense to them, and I'll be able to engage them in even deeper conversation. Because now what did I do in the first part? I've created value in myself by being the expert. And once you've created value in yourself by being the expert, party's over, they're hooked. And now we're going to be getting into much deeper emotion. So once we get to the emotion, now it is, well, Lincoln Heritage can provide immediate payout to your family. Have you ever had to plan or pay for a funeral before? And then depending on what they say, will determine where you take that. So if they say yes, how long ago was that? Did the person have a policy? How long did it take for you to receive that money? Did you have to assign that policy over to a funeral home? Do you remember how long it took for the death certificates to process? Just asking those types of questions before I tell them what we can provide, so I can see how much they know and what their experience was like. So then, only then, and if they say, no, I haven't, then there really isn't a ton for you to go. So no, they haven't. Okay, perfect. So I'm about to tell you what happens in the funeral business when someone passes away. And hold on, I just lost my train of thought. So I'm about to tell you what's going to happen, what happens in the funeral business when someone passes away. And the first thing that happens when you go to file a claim is, what do you think the insurance company needs before they will pay your family, your life insurance policy? And you see how I'm sort of engaging them in questions instead of just pitching. If they don't know, I'll tell them they need the death certificate. Okay, and maybe they'll tell me, yes, they need the death certificate. Exactly. Do you have any idea how long it takes the state and the funeral home to generate a death certificate? It can take a couple weeks. So think about it for a second. If it takes a couple weeks, for a week or two, for a funeral home to provide a death certificate, you're already a week or two out from filing that claim with the insurance company. Once that claim is filed with the insurance company, it's usually at least a couple more weeks until that claim is paid. Do you think your family is going to have 4 weeks to wait to pay for your final expenses when you pass away? No, they're asked. Exactly. So Lincoln Heritage has the ability to work directly with any funeral home in the country and provide your family with immediate payout within 24 to 48 hours before we even get the death certificate. How does that make you feel, knowing that your family is going to have control of that money and will not have to worry about coming out of pocket and waiting to get reimbursed by an insurance company? And that's where I'm at right now. We're only talking about the immediate payout. I haven't even talked about how the funeral homes will try to get them to assign a policy over. So I'm not going to go into the whole entire rest of the presentation. I'm trying to paint a picture that even though the script says one thing, right, and it's designed to provide you with the information that you need to give a great presentation, it isn't necessarily meant to be read verbatim once you've done it several times. So I know I have someone brand new on this team on this call right now. For you do need to kind of go more verbatim until you really have several conversations where you can have that chess game in your mind and know where to go before people reach you. But for those that have been with us for a while, it's time to take that pacifier out and think outside of the box and be a better sales professional and not handicap yourself to the scripts verbatim anymore. You have to set the bar higher for yourself and higher for your customers if you are going to have a 50% close rate. You have to. So painting that picture by asking questions, the way that you speak it, the way that you present it, it all is going to lead up to the point where by the time you get to asking those health questions, they should already be sold. That's it. There's nowhere else for them to go. At this point, it's just going to be about finding the best affordable price. And if they don't buy from you, they shouldn't be buying from anyone else. They shouldn't be buying insurance, period. Those are the people that shouldn't be buying from you. If someone still feels like they have to price shop and they buy from someone else based on price, then you didn't provide them enough value, right? Because I truly believe for final expense insurance, we're worth the extra $30 a month every time. I'll ask them, if Lincoln Heritage is $30 a month more expensive than the competition, just throwing out a number, would that be worth it for you, knowing that your family is going to get immediately paid out so they don't have to assign a policy over to a funeral home, and give you peace of mind that they're going to be protected by not getting taken advantage of financially? Is that something that would be worth it to you? Let them answer. Because most of the time, if you've done a good enough job, they will already have justified to you before you even quote them that they're willing to pay more for what you have.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in regards to, for example, the energy and having control of the conversation, I found myself having conversations yesterday with people that felt like they were in a rush, and I didn't know how to slow the pace down where they could actually engage or be present in the conversation. So a lot of the times they just wanted to leave. And so I do mention that, hey, it's just a few questions, and if you don't end up liking me, you can just hang up the phone. I didn't say it verbatim, which now I definitely want to do, but even in that case, when they do throw in an objection to that, how would you maneuver the situation to still be in control and still be able to have that informative conversation with them?
So what I typically do when someone is sounding like they're in a rush with me when they get on the phone, I always take a step back. And this is usually what I say. I'll say, look, I respect your time and I am here to not waste it. But it is really important to me that before I just give you a price, that you have an understanding of what it is you're getting a price for. Otherwise, it's not going to do either of us any good. Do you agree that you need to understand what you're getting in addition to getting a price? Is that something that's important to you, right? So I'm still asking questions. And if they say no, then I won't continue the conversation. If somebody is not willing to take the journey with me, the best thing that I can do for myself is end that call. Okay. I will never give somebody a price unless they are taking the journey with me. And the only way I can do that is by getting in control in the first few minutes. And so then I'll even say, look, this isn't going to take a long time. There are a few questions that I need to ask you to really get a better understanding of what type of insurance might be the best fit for you. And then we'll just take it from there. Does that sound fair? Kind of like drop the rope and sound genuine, sound like I have some concern for them. And if they say, you know what, honestly, I'm in the car, I'm like 5 minutes until I get to my next destination. Perfect, no problem. What I'll do is let you on with your day and we will follow up with you at a better time. That's all you can do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But yeah, this will not sell on price. And if you have somebody that isn't willing to go through the whole process with you, you gotta let it go early on or figure out what you're doing wrong to not have those conversations more consistently. And that could be for a separate call.
So, question,
yeah.
How long do your calls usually take on sales and closed deals?
An hour.
Okay.
About an hour.
Thank you.
So here's some tips that I'm going to leave with you guys. You have to stay consistent in your approach. Otherwise, you won't be able to identify and know what actually works. Most of the time, when people start, they are very engaged in the process and can sell a lot right out of the gates because they're doing what they were trained. And then you kind of sometimes start to see sales taper off. and pretty consistently, that's the right word, I'll listen to the calls, and all of a sudden they stop doing what worked in the first place. They stopped taking the journey. They started paraphrasing benefits. They weren't asking questions. They were having a monologue, not a dialogue. And all of a sudden, they don't understand why they're not selling anymore. You have to stay consistent and you have to take the journey. You have to ask questions every time. And let me tell you something. If you get a referral or a laydown, it is even more important than ever to take the journey and stay consistent. Can someone tell me why on someone that is a laydown or a referral that you know they're going to buy, why it's even more important with that person to take the journey?
You still want to provide them with the experience, the full experience with Lincoln Heritage, and also the, you know, digging deep with them, because that's also part of the value that we're providing as opposed to other companies.
And also
So,
because if they're a referral, then whoever referred them had been telling them about what we were offering. And so to be consistent is almost mandatory, so that they're not like, oh, well, they told me something else or they said something else. You know, you want to be consistent with your customers, especially if they're talking amongst each other.
and so they know why to keep it.
Boom. You got it, Jesse. So if you're talking to a laydown, which is someone that says, I just need, I need final expense insurance. I've heard of your company. I need a policy, because that can happen sometimes. You can get laydowns, or, it's a Lincoln Heritage lead and they specifically inquired with us, and you think it's just going to be an easy sale. So you kind of paraphrase and go into the health questions and get the sale. But people that are laydowns and easy to sell, guess who else is going to be able to easily sell them?
Other
Somebody
companies.
else
Somebody else.
provides benefit.
So those people are going to be the easiest to cancel and buy with somebody else based on price. You will have more chargebacks with the laydowns than you will with the people that actually asked a lot of questions and made it difficult for you, because they don't want to go through all that again. So don't take advantage of the situations where you think you have someone easy on the phone. It is even more critical to make sure that they understand it. So I've heard that a few times, and I just want to make sure I bring that up. Being a sales professional also comes with using phrases like, my recommendation is. This is towards the end. So many times I'm hearing at the end of the call, which one do you want to do? Or the client will say, well, what do you think? And the salesperson will say, well, whatever fits your budget. I mean, which one sounds best to you? You guys, that is awful. You cannot have a conversation at the end of the call wishy-washy. You have to be just as strong at the end as you do in the beginning. So here's the 3 prices that we went over. Do all of these seem to fit within a comfortable budget for you? Or do we need to look at other options? So that's kind of where I'm just kind of feeling out where they are financially. Perfect. My recommendation is to choose the $10,000 policy. And here's why. Because we already know it's going to more than cover the cost of your cremation. And we'll leave, $8,000 or $9,000 left over for your family. And you already told me, because we've uncovered this earlier, that you're not trying to make them rich. You just want to make sure that they don't have to pay for anything else, or a cleaning crew to clean up the house, or maybe a service, or maybe just stick a little bit of money in their grandkids' bank account. My recommendation is to apply for the $10,000, because we know that fits within a comfortable budget for you. And the last thing I need to have happening is you going broke or stressing out about how to make an insurance payment. Does that make sense to you? Okay, perfect. So if you ever decide that you want to increase later, you always can, but let's start with the 10,000, and we're going to list Bob and Sally as a 50-50 split, right? Because I already know that by asking questions and uncovering it. So my recommendation would be something I would add at the end. You have to be the authority. People need to be led to the path. They don't get to 75 years old and have never had a pitch by an insurance person before. This isn't their first rodeo. So you need to lead them down the path by saying things like that. In general, I think that in staying consistent with your pitch, you also need to stay consistent with your time. So this is you being a sales professional for yourself. You have to make the decision every day to say, you know what? I'm going to come in at this time. I'm going to leave at this time. And my goal is to make X amount of dials. And I don't care if I get 3 sales in the morning. I don't care if it takes me the entire day until I get a sale or 2. This is the time I've committed to put in for myself. And if you stay consistent in your pitch and consistent in your time and dials, you won't fail. You keep coming to these coaching sessions where I remind you about things that are happening, where you're getting a little bit lazy, where you're not asking enough questions, you will not fail. It's impossible. And then lastly, when you're working on the close, you cannot pressure somebody into applying. It will not work. If you are clinging on to the no obligation, we're not charging you anything today as your Hail Mary to get that application, you will sound desperate and it will feel like pressure. Your pitch and your presentation has to be so strong that that part of the presentation is the last piece of concern they have. They just want to make sure that they have a little bit of breathing room so they're not paying today. That should be like the last concern you're addressing, or maybe they just need to double check it with somebody and they don't want to be charged today. They just need a little bit of breathing room, but they're already sold. That's where that is going to work. But if you hadn't sold them on yourself and our product prior to giving them the quotes, and then they say, I still want to think about it, you can't use well, there's no obligation, we're not charging you anything today, because that probably doesn't have anything to do with why they're giving you a no in the first place. So you would probably have to ask more questions, like, well, can I ask you a question? What exactly is holding you back from wanting to make a decision? Or what's holding you back from wanting to apply to make sure you get the approval? That's another open-ended question where you can get them to tell you the real reason why they're not doing it. And then you'll know where to go. And so I know it was a lot. That's basically what I had time to cover today. Does anybody have any additional questions?
No, very helpful. Thank you, Dana.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let me pause the recording.